Today, I'm going to continue responding to parts of one of Deconverted Man's videos. If you want to see my other discussions spurred by it, such as the one on determining intent, see the card in the corner of the video.
Can you stop being a racist? And what does it take to do that in the public eye?
The first problem here is determining what the public eye even is. Not in the general definitional sense, I think I understand what's meant there, basically the combined or collective view or opinion. But what we think this is colored by the loud and obnoxious. We focus our attention on things that are actually outside of the norm. We don't generally focus on what everybody already agrees with. We're drawn to things that are shocking or unexpected. Why do you think clickbait works? We also misinterpret information we're presented with, often making sloppy and ultimately drastically incorrect conclusions about the world around us. For example, hearing about crime on the news, and then viewing the world as a more dangerous place, even as crime on the whole decreased over the years. We have so many biases that interfere with how we see things. I'm sure if I tried to mention them all in this video, it would take all day. If I tried to link to information about every one of them, I'd find the character limit for the description box as well. And our view of what is normal or perceived truth is actually much the same as our view of anything else. It can be completely wrong, manipulated by what our friends believe or what we see around us. And as such, I have two things to say about this question. First, as I've already hinted, I'd like to propose that often what we perceive as the public eye on many matters isn't actually what the majority think or have to say at all. What I believe it is, instead, is the product of our brains doing what they do best, picking out the most extreme or seemingly important examples and mistakenly treating them as far more common than they really are. I don't ask that you take my word for this. Only analyze it yourself. Pick something that you think there's a public eye style consensus on, particularly something you think the public is wrong about, and then look for how many different examples you have supporting that. And look at what that support is, too. For example, are people actually saying the same basic thing, or is it just people lazily putting forward what another said? And compare that to how often you see one, two, or a handful of examples. This can work even if your different examples essentially include just one. For example, if the reason you believe everyone agrees with a statement is partially because many people retweet it, then compare what you've seen of people retweeting it in agreement, or even without comment, to the number of times you've seen it shared specifically to disagree with it. You may be surprised. And that's even just analyzing what you're already seeing, not getting a proper representative sample. Even though it's not how we tend to actually work, I sincerely believe we need some actual data on what most people, whether the whole of society or specific groups within it, actually believe. I suspect we get it wrong more often than we get it right. And second, I have a question for you. How many people have to respond to something critically, opposing the original message, for the public opinion or view in the public eye to be the opposition and not the original message? Keep in mind, by the way, that the original has been spread by every single disagreement posted in response to it. And toward the end, we have the real crux of the issue at hand, something I truly believe is a symptom of a far larger problem, and one where even the symptom goes far beyond the main question at hand of your video.
Engage me in conversations. Don't just dismiss me because of your feelings. But we do that all the time to people. You know, people have been fired and are getting fired over saying one racist remark on some social media. People are, comedians that say racist things, whether it be inside of a joke or just because they're saying something to insult the audience members because they're upset. Well, they lose their career. I don't know if that's right or wrong. I honestly don't. But I wonder what they could do to make it right. Okay, so they said something. They said it in the heat of anger. And that's not okay. But does that mean that they therefore have to lose their occupation over it? Isn't that a bit extreme? Can't they just say sorry? But then if they say sorry, well, that doesn't seem to help anything either. So what are they supposed to do? Well, never say the thing in the first place. So, oh, when you're mad, you never ever say things that you regret? Really?
There are many things that I can see at play here. Things that would be equally at play if they'd made another kind of mistake in a public manner. Things like the distrust of others. In the last few decades, people overall have become significantly less trusting of the average other person. Just this right here leads to a huge problem with two different things I mentioned regarding analyzing intent. First, if we start off not trusting people, we're even less likely to consider their explanation credible. This is even if we avoid things that cause issue, like accusing, and even without them doing anything extra to make us distrust them. Remember, we're starting from not considering them trustworthy. We are then basically looking for every possible way to distrust whatever they tell us. Then, the same level of heightened scrutiny and cynicism applies when they apologize. We don't trust them, remember, by default. So instead of accepting at face value that they regret what they said, we're looking for those cues that maybe they don't. Oh, sure, they sound sincere enough, but they didn't care about it until their job was threatened. Never mind that the very first person to bring it to their attention also happened to threaten their job, so there was no chance for them to be seen as simply doing the right thing upon getting new information. And then we have the tendency to assume the worst about people when viewing the mistakes of others. This ties in with the default distrust, but also how we attribute much of our own actions, rightly or wrongly, to outside causes. Yet when we evaluate someone else's actions, we regularly refuse to grant those same influencing factors are major for them as well. Though we do seem to pick and choose, specifically giving more weight to outside influences that make us view others as worse than they are. For example, when someone apologizes and we attribute that to trying to save their job. Or for discounting other influences, if someone has a health problem, people may assume they didn't take care of themselves. And then there's a desire for and focus on vengeance. This one, I think, is at least partially societal. Or at the very least, some societies have managed to reduce their focus on this. Viewed more broadly, we have a tendency to focus on what we believe is deserved, rather than what's necessary, beneficial, and so on. Often we'll look at, for example, a fired comedian and get into something like, well, he's racist, does he really deserve a show? Or, yeah, he said this potentially offensive thing, but did he really deserve to lose his career over it? Personally, I don't even like this way of viewing the world and the situations. I'd find it more important to figure out if he was harming anyone in the process, or if ending his career is necessary or useful for some reason, such as if the show is contributing harm to society and removing it will stop that. But if we must look at it in terms of what's deserved or getting justice for some wrongdoing, then we need to at least clear up the other problems keeping us from fairly analyzing the situation in the first place. Then, with all of these issues, whether inherent to humans or part of our culture, we add on top of it the fact that now literally everybody has a platform and a voice. Someone who might have been screaming about the perceived injustice of it all to their friends when I was a child may think that that's what they're doing now, but their rant may instead be heard by the entire world. Often this means it's heard by people who have no prior interactions with them and lack important context for their statement, especially when it occurs on platforms with short character limits like Twitter. Ultimately, the internet is a great thing, but not strictly in the common usage meaning excellent. It's more great in the sense of it has great power. That's what it has and presents. It's a massive, powerful tool, one that can bring together people with rare, obscure conditions so that they can learn how to live a better life. But it can also bring together bitter people who are blaming somebody else for all of their problems. One that can show us the atrocities committed by a government on the other side of the world so that we can help put an end to them, but can also show us the rant of that crazy neighbor we'd otherwise just ignore. One that can let a socially awkward kid learn to socialize or get some interaction at the very least, or that can be used to attack and mock them for every single little mistake they make. And it's still new enough that we haven't really figured out how to use it responsibly, even though so many of us have access to it and use it each and every day. And that's causing and amplifying quite a few problems for us. So I seriously hope we collectively figure it out sooner rather than later. Thanks for hearing me out. As always, civil discussion, suggestions, and constructive criticism are welcome in the comments or via social media. Feel free to rate, comment, and share. If you want to hear more from me, subscribe and click the bell for notifications, and check out the description for any sources that I've used.